The topic to be discussed in this video is integration of IoT with IP. IP means Internet Protocol. Integration of IoT devices with IP using a domain namespace system, domain name system, and the dynamic host configuration protocol is the most efficient way. Two types of protocols. One is the distribution system, DNS, domain name system distribution, and host configuration, dynamic host configuration protocol. Integration of IoT devices with IP using domain name system, DNS, and dynamic host configuration protocol. DHCP is the most efficient way. Second point here is DNS is the domain name system used in internet applications, and dynamic host configuration protocol is the protocol used in IoT devices integrated with IP. First one, dynamic host configuration protocol. Dynamic host configuration protocol, DHCP. It is a network management protocol used in networks to dynamically assign IP addresses. DHCP is a network management protocol used in networks to dynamically assign IP addresses. And other network configuration. Configuration information like default gateways, mask, DNS server address, etc. Dynamic host configuration protocol is a network management protocol used in networks to dynamically assign IP addresses. IP address is generally used to identify the objects or devices which are connected to communication networks. The DHCP is used to assign such type of addresses dynamically. And also other network configuration information like a default gateway, mask, domain name system, and the server address, etc. Next important, automatically DHCP assigns DHCP serves automatically assigns IP addresses to various devices in network. The advantage of this one is reduces the network administration burden. That is the main advantage. Automatically assign IP addresses to devices. Whenever a new device are added to communication network, with the help of some handshakes signals between the server and the clients, assign some IP addresses to new devices automatically. DHCP is a protocol assigns IP addresses automatically to the devices. This in turn reduces work of network administrator. To manual assign IP addresses to manually assign IP addresses to various devices. Coming to next one is DNS. Second one is DNS, domain name system. Suppose each device on the internet has its own unique address known as IP address. IP addresses consisting of 4 set of numbers extending from 0 to 255 separated by a dot or period. That is very, very important. Each computer or each device on the internet has its own unique address known as an IP address. IP address consists of consisting of 4 set of numbers extending from 0 to 255 separated by a period. or dot. A dot. Example IP address example is 104.26.10.228. It is very difficult to remember these numbers for accessing the web pages. That is the reason we go for a domain name system. It is not easy having to remember this complicated collection of numbers every time you want to access a website, which is a difficult task. It is not easy having to remember this complicated collection of numbers every time. You want to access a website. DNS comes into picture. That is very important one. DNS works as a most important infrastructure for internet naming services. Domain name system works as a most important infrastructure for internet naming service. It is very difficult to remember such type of numbers. That is the reason we go for domain names instead of numbers. DNS translates user-friendly domain names into computer-friendly IP addresses because these devices are identified with the help of IP addresses only. But difficult thing is it is very difficult to remember such type of numbers. DNS is a TCP/IP based distributed name service to map host names to IP addresses. DNS is TCP/IP based distributed name service to map host names to IP addresses. That is the example www.google.com. This is the domain name. DNS translates this domain name into user. The domain names are consist of alphabets. These names are easily remembered compared to numbers. But the DNS translates these user-friendly domain names into computer-friendly IP addresses. This one is the example. DNS translates user-friendly domain names into computer-friendly IP addresses. That is the main important. DNS is the internet system for mapping alphabetic names to numeric internet protocol addresses. Like a phone book maps a person name to a phone number. DNS is the internet system for mapping alphabetic names to numeric internet protocol addresses. Like a phone book maps a person name to a phone number. DNS allows you to interact with the device on the internet without having to remember long string of numbers. That is very, very important. Another important. DNS allows you to interact with the device on the internet without having to remember long string of numbers. That is very, very important one. That is the DNS. But in case of IoT, IoT needs some name service similar to DNS to map things names into heterogeneous namespace to corresponding IP addresses. IoT needs name service similar to DNS domain name system to map things names. Things are the IoT devices. Things names in heterogeneous namespace heterogeneous namespace to corresponding IP addresses. It is very difficult to translate IoT device names into IP addresses. Due to mobility, dynamic nature, heterogeneous namespace, and resource constraints in IoT, IoT names server needs special attention. So in IoT platforms, so many IoT applications infrastructures are there. So many heterogeneous networks are there. Different types of devices, different types of technologies, different types of data formats. All are interlinked and communicate with each other and generates the data, huge amount of data like that. In that case, it is very difficult to map to devise names into IP addresses or IoT addresses. You must take care some attention for mapping purpose. Due to mobility, dynamic nature, heterogeneous namespace, and the resource constraints in IoT. IoT name server needs special attention. Like DNS. Special attention. Special attention. Due to scalability, more number of devices are attached to that network, depend on the application. Names to addresses mapping needs to be efficient in time. Otherwise, have to place some problems. Due to scalability, of IoT names, to addresses mapping needs to be efficient in time. Advantages of integrating IoT with IP. Advantages of integrating IoT with the IP. First one, suppose so many heterogeneous IoT platforms are there. Now the integration of IoT with IP or support heterogeneous communication standard and interoperability. Support this type of integration supports heterogeneous communication standard. Communication standard and interoperability. Generally, transport layer protocol uses two types of protocols, TCP and UDP. For reliable communications purpose, we use TCP. For unreliable communication purpose, we use UDP. For network services, we use UDP. For human interaction services, we use TCP. By using that TCP, have to provide end-to-end reliability along with IP. applicable APPLI CABLE applicable to transport protocol. Applicable to transport protocol for end-to-end reliability. End-to-end reliability. Along with IP, these devices are definitely send some information to another device, that another device receive that sending information. That is called as end-to-end reliability. Well-established DNS user naming. Well-established DNS-based naming. DNS-based naming and addressing and lookup services. And lookup services. Generally, application level protocols are also playing an important role. Generally, for web accessing applications, we use HTTPL, HTTP and XML. Application level protocol support like HTTP, Hyper Transfer Text Protocol, and XML, Extensive Markup Language Protocol. Good network management support like good network management support SNMP. Simple Network Management Protocol. Simple Network Management Protocol. These are the some advantages of integrating IoT with IP. Generally, two types of systems are used. One is a dynamic host configuration protocol. Another one is a domain name system. Domain name system is mapping of domain name addresses into domain names into IP addresses. Human-friendly domain names into machine-friendly IP addresses. That is called as mapping. Map to human-friendly domain names into machine-friendly IP addresses. Like assign phone numbers to some names of subscribers. Assign phone numbers to some subscribers is the domain name system. Dynamic host configuration automatically assigns IP addresses to devices. With the help of that IP addresses, identify the devices which is connected to computer network. Integration of IoT with IP provides some advantages: interoperability, heterogeneous standard, end-to-end reliability, well-established DNS-based naming. Application point of view, we use two types of protocols, HTTP and XML. For good network management support, we use another protocol that is called as the SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol.